Peace, y'all. This is Farajii Muhammad with the Culture on Black Star Network. Today, folks, we're going to talk about the state of Black America's health. There was a new report that came out from USA Today to show that the health disparities in this country is absolutely mind-blowing. We'll check in with our culture crew to get their take on what we're seeing on the health side of things. Also, we got to talk about what one Alabama school is doing to honoring its first Black student. They say that they're going to put her name on a building. Problem is, her name is next to a KKK politician. Folks are outraged. We'll talk a little bit about that. In the next hour, we'll talk about the efficacy of no-knock warrants. Another life has been taken. The life of Amir Locke has been taken as a result of a no-knock warrant. It looks like this tactic is still being used even after the Breonna Taylor fiasco. We'll have that. And of course, we'll check in with the crew about all things from trends, posts, and doing the most. So stay with us. We got a lot to get to on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, we want to talk about what is going on with the state of Black America, especially in light of the fact that this is Black History Month, a month where we're celebrating the great contributions of our heroes and sheroes. But the great disparity that exists within the Black community around health and wellness continues to grow wider and wider. And even as we celebrate Black History Month this year, it shows that there hasn't been that much progress made in the hospital rooms, nor has there been much progress made in terms of keeping this data at a reasonable or manageable place. Folks, I just want to share with you just a little bit about what this situation really is breaking down to. According to USA Today, they did a report and a study, and they looked at a report that was published by the Center for Disease Control, the CDC. And in that report, it found that Black people in this country, a fifth of Black Americans, is considered to be in fair or poor health. And they found that Black Americans, check this out, folks, cope with persistent racism, carry intergenerational trauma, are more likely to live in poverty, experience structural inequalities in healthcare, and in the US have experienced among the highest death tolls from COVID-19. Now, let me share with you a little bit of some of the demographics and how this impacts young people and older folks. Black Americans ages 18 to 49 are 2 times as likely to die from heart disease than white Americans. And Black Americans ages 35 to 64 are 50% more likely to have high blood pressure, according to the CDC. Now, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women, and Black women and girls experience disproportionate rates of sexual violence. Also, Black Americans are also less likely than white Americans to use primary care and to seek therapy, because when they do seek help, they report that physicians minimize our concerns. By the time that many of us Black folks walk into a doctor's office or a hospital, we are already in crisis. Man. So when we look at what's just going on with this disparity, and as much as, like I said, we're talking about the contributions, the great things that we've seen in civil rights, the great gains that we have made in politics, the great gains that we have made in educational opportunities, the one place that we really need to be the most concerned about is our health and wellness. This is the place that so many of us are trying to deal with and are challenged by. And when you look at what's happening, look at these numbers, folks, a fifth of us. Now, this is based upon, of course, surveys and studies, but that number could go up and that number could be much bigger than what the CDC reports. The fact remains, folks, we are not healthy. And the stigma, the attitudes, the views that we have about the healthcare system in this country is very, very much based on mistrust that we have for the resources. And of course, we are still looking at a lot of us just don't have the same access to these resources. So we have a number of major challenges that are facing us when it comes to our health and our wellness. And today I wanted to talk to the crew to kind of get some take on this situation. I'm joined by cultural crew member Iman Heath, who is an activist and entrepreneur. And then we're also joined by Lise Winnie, who serves as the host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. Ladies, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Lise. And Iman, good to see you again, sis. How you feeling?
I always have the mic problem. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I'm just breaking it down very quickly, sisters, around this whole issue of health disparity, where we are in this country with health and wellness, looking at this report. And after I was reading this a little bit about what this report had to offer, Lisa, I have to say, sis, that it doesn't feel like progress is being made. I mean, time and time again, when you look at these numbers and when you talk to people, just in general, just where people are, especially with COVID-19, I mean, it seems like this disparity is not growing any smaller. It's actually getting wider. What's your take on that?
I agree. I think that with COVID, it actually made it slightly worse because we had so many people who don't believe what's going on. They don't believe the medical establishment, and they have some reason to believe that. So it made people less likely to seek treatment, in COVID because, first of all, the hospitals were bombarded. Then people didn't trust what the medical establishment was saying anyway. So it made it a lot worse during COVID. And then, of course, with the health problems that we had previously, African Americans were more likely to die from COVID because of those other issues that they had. So I see this as being a problem going forward, especially trying to get people's trust back. And right now,
Yeah.
things are just not going in a good direction.
Iman, when Lee's talking about this is, you have the trust factor. You and I have had numerous conversations about trust and Black people in America. Trust when it comes to any institution, whether you're talking about government or whether you're talking about the doctor. But the trust factor is still a big thing, a big hurdle for many pharmaceutical companies to get over, for local doctors to get through. Trust. Is there a way, or do you truly believe that Black people will ever trust the medical industry in this country?
From the history of what America has done as far as Blacks when it comes to experiments, I'll even say, I believe his name was James Sims. In 1880, he became the president for the American, I want to make sure I say this properly, Gynecology Association. They were operating on women, Black women, slaves, without any medical assistance as far as pain relief, trying to deliver babies, work on her ovaries and things like that. So even just from something from 1880, it's repeated history on the Tuskegee experiment. That as well.
Right.
There's a history of not being able to trust America when it comes to African Americans and our health. Like I agree, our disparity, it will grow. COVID did expose a lot of things. And another thing I want to mention is this white coat syndrome that a lot of our Black doctors have that isn't doing anything good for the Black community. I think we should push natural remedies, natural resources, but everyone's saying, take medicine, take medicine, take medicine. But we it's hard to trust considering America's history when it comes to African Americans and our health.
Now, you said the white coat syndrome. What exactly, for those who may not be familiar with that terminology,
So
what does that mean?
white coat syndrome, in a simple term, is basically you trust what your doctor tells you because of their credibility. Let's say on paper they may be certified to tell you this and tell you that. However, you don't think to take it on your own. Let me research this medicine. Let me see what the side effects may be of these with this prescription. Let me see how this will affect me in the long run. So just because your doctor said it's this or it's that, let's not always take it as, okay, that's what it is because that's what they told me. Oh, that's my doctor. I know they know what they're talking about. Oh, because you said that I'm diagnosed with diabetes and I had to take this medicine the rest of my life, there's no other options. So that's basically white coat syndrome. You'll believe what your doctor says just because they're, the doctor. We supposed
But
to
you know what?
trust.
We also, but you know, Iman and Lise, I mean, we're also taught that if you get one opinion from one doctor, that you should really seek out a second or third opinion, right, Lise? That people, especially for Black folks, because and it says this in this report that most times the first opinion is generally not the correct one. I mean, how many times have Black women walked into the hospital room, into the doctor's office, and they are diagnosed? Their diagnosis is just totally incorrect,
Misdiagnosed.
just
Yeah, it's way
misdiagnosed,
off.
just like
Way off.
crazy. You know what I'm saying? So when you have that type of situation, you know, at least you're talking about having to make an extra step to say, you know what, let me go and get some a different opinion from somebody else. That can be in itself a very stressful situation.
It can. And I think that not only is it a very stressful situation to have to find out and make sure you do your research, because anybody who's getting any type of medical, whether it's holistic or otherwise, you should be doing research to figure out exactly what it is that
Absolutely.
you are taking. I think that there is also a level of stubbornness as well, because a lot of the issues that we face, especially in the African American community, when you look at the rates of hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes, a lot of it comes from the food that we eat. Of course, it's
Right.
cultural, but it also has to deal with economics. African Americans are usually less likely to be wealthy. The wealthier you are, the more access you have to grocery stores. They have food deserts in places where you cannot go and get
All over the place.
fruits
Yeah.
and vegetables in order to eat well, because it all starts with what you eat. And I think that if we take that along with unfortunately you have to do extra steps and protect yourself. Well, not unfortunately, because that's something that we all should do. But you have to do your research, but we also have to make sure that we understand that you have to be healthy before you can even be a whole person. Like, you've got to start with
Correct.
the way that we eat
Correct.
before you get and go down that pathway of medicine. And I'm not anti-medicine by no means.
Right. I mean, I truly agree with you. I mean, I think that certain conditions require medicine, right? You can't just go holistic with every single thing. I think that certain conditions are more severe than others that your body needs, some assistance. But, you know, when we talk about that second opinion, I mean, check this out, sisters, in terms of the landscape of the second opinion. You go to one doctor, your doctor may be Black, your doctor may be white. But according to the American Psychological Association, the Association of the American Medical Colleges, only 5% of active physicians are Black. That's on the medical side. If you're talking about the mental health side, only 4% of psychologists in the US workforce are Black, and that comes from the American Psychological Association. So whether you have a physical ailment or you have a mental health issue, you have a very small pool of competent, qualified, active doctors and counselors and professionals to help you in your situation. After a while, you try to get a first, you might go to the second, you might get a Black doctor on the second one, but the third one, most likely, you may not get that. You may not get that. So Iman, when you're looking at that situation, it's I mean, that is, and it's in of itself is just like, where do people go to get the right information to be healthy?
Where do you start? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Then with, trending now, trying to take the holistic way as far as with medicine, even still, like you said, having access to get you those certain things and those food deserts that are growing, by the way. I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but Walmart looks pretty empty to me. And it's only growing. I would say, as far as the disparities when it comes to our healthcare, like she said, we have to take responsibility for part of it. We will have high blood pressure, but still eat our fried pork chops with rice and gravy every Sunday. We'll still have our collard greens with our turkey neck bones in it or whatnot. I can say I may have been one of those people who've known I shouldn't eat this, but because I like it, I usually eat it. I'm gonna try again. But we just
Iman, we gotta throw it in there. This is what I heard. I know Iman and Lisa, I know y'all heard this. When you try to say, hey, we shouldn't be eating certain foods, somebody in the family always say, well, grandma, who lived to be 85, she ate this and
We've
she
been
ain't
doing
have
this
no
for
problem.
years.
But no, here's the thing. You didn't include in that narrative that grandma suffers from high blood pressure. Her
Her foot
ankles
done
are
got
swollen.
amputated.
Her foot, you know what I'm saying? Like she can hardly think straight, right? And she's not as mobile
Nope.
that she used to be. Like
Almost
we're not
asthma attack going up the steps.
Right. Right.
Right.
So
yeah, but they
it's,
will keep feeding you the pies though, even while they're telling you that they're gonna still give you the pies in the food. But you had mentioned something, and I want to make this very clear. So I've had an instance when I had a doctor who completely misdiagnosed me while I was pregnant, actually, and she was Black. So that's why I want people to know that just because somebody is Black doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do the right thing by you. You do need to do research and just please, I've seen this time and time again where people just show up and they're like, I just want somebody Black. That it doesn't make you qualified. You also have to look at their credentials and the research on them as well, not just because they're Black. So I just want to say that too.
No, that's a great point.
Absolutely.
And let me ask you, sisters, like when we're talking about these disparities, who do you think is responsible for changing these structural inequalities? Because a part of me, and I know that we always do, there's a sense of victim blaming in this country when it comes to Black people in the medical and health industry, right? That if Black people did this, we would do that, as if Black people have control of the medical industry. And I'm saying that there needs to be a change coming from a different group of people beyond just the ones that are coming there to get the health care that they need.
Who holds the power is the question.
Yeah.
Who holds the power? Who holds the power? And it's definitely, I wouldn't say with minorities as far as with poverty, and we keep bringing this up as far as access. It's not the small group of us. It's going to take us, start with us. However, those who are actually able to get in the room, sit at the table with those that need to be a part of the discussion, they have to be a part as well. They have to team right. Tag along with us as well. We have we can have the gusto to do it. We can get the ball rolling, but it has to continue to be pushed by those who can actually make the difference and the change. Just to keep preaching and talking about it and make articles and post about it on social media isn't going to get the job done. So those physicians who aren't afraid to speak out and not worry about being blackballed or losing their job. A lot of doctors during this pandemic lost their credibility due to stating that they don't agree with the medical procedures that have been going on with the pandemic. So we have to find those who aren't afraid or scared or worried about, it's hard to say, hey, risk everything for me, risk everything for something that isn't affecting you, but we need the help. We need the help.
Absolutely. I want to share with you what one doctor said, Dr. Alicia Moreland Capuya. Dr. Alicia Moreland Capuya. She's the director of McLean Hospital's Institute for Trauma-Informed Systems Change. And she says in this piece that the onus is on white medical professionals to create safer conditions for Black patients to participate in care, which includes a willingness on the part of white doctors to inquire about, acknowledge, and consider historical trauma and harm, and a willingness to create thoughtful treatment plans that accommodate that history. I'm wondering, Lise, as beautiful as I think Dr. Alicia is on point, and I think she's absolutely correct, how many white doctors are willing to take those extra steps? It's when even though they may have Black patients, to understand, to acknowledge, to consider historical trauma, to talk about their willingness. Do you think that is a realistic expectation for white doctors, or are we asking for too much?
I think once you ask people to do extra, it's always going down a slippery slope. As far as with white doctors taking that into account, I don't think that you're going to get, because you're changing mindset at this point. So it's not even just an education at this point. You have to change somebody's mind. I think it does start though in college, because just like in the 90s, they were still teaching that Black people had a higher pain threshold in the 90s. So they just recently took that out of the medical books. So I think it starts there. And then, of course, bedside manner has been not great for just in general. We've seen like a decline in bedside manner with doctors. So I think trying to get white doctors to take into the historical events that have happened to African Americans and utilize that while they're trying to treat them with trying to keep up bed manner, I honestly think that it's an unrealistic goal. It's unfortunate that it's that way, but we have to keep making sure that the people that they bring into the medical facilities and establishments understand that you have to treat everybody with respect, and that you have to use common sense, courtesy, and when you're dealing with people who have dealt with some trauma and maybe have a little bit more fear than other people, that you have to ease them into that, and that is a part of your job in order to get them to understand that.
Look, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Lisa, and I think that this is why, one, we need to have these conversations, but two, I think it's very important that we start to gear our children towards fields, toward the medical field, toward the healthcare field. I mean, we need to like completely flood the field with qualified, well-groomed, conscious Black folks. And it starts with the children. I don't know about these adults, but I'm just saying.
Not every child has to play football and basketball.
No, thank you.
You don't have to play sports.
I mean, we need to make sure that our children, that being a doctor, being a nurse, being a mental health counselor, being a healthcare provider is a very, very, not just lucrative in terms of money, but it's a very rewarding profession, because we need that. We need that, right? I mean, back in the day when our grandparents and grandmothers and grandfathers, and when they were around, I mean, the idea of a Black doctor was always up at the top of the respect pole they were the top of the top. Black doctor, Black lawyer, Black teacher, and all of those things. Somewhere along the line in our culture, that those ideas, those dreams just fell apart. And I'm saying this is the time right now where we're talking about getting some of the greatest and most brilliant minds. I don't care if you get Black folks going to Cuba to get their healthcare training and then bringing it back to America, whether they're going to Howard or if they're going to Hopkins, wherever they are, they need to flood the market, to flood the industry. All right, ladies, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come right back, let's talk about what's happening down in Alabama that's gotten Black folk going crazy. How one school said that they're honoring their first Black student with putting her name on a building next to a KKK politician. How did you get that wrong? We'll talk about the details. Stay riding with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, the University of Alabama has decided to take one of its esteemed buildings and to rename it Graves Hall, which is currently named after Bibb Graves, who served as the governor of Alabama and who is a well-known KKK Klan, Ku Klux Klan officer. Now, in an attempt to change the name, the school and the board of trustees decided that they would name the building after their first Black student, Lucy Foster. Now, Lucy Foster attended the school back in University of Alabama back in 1956. And guess what? She only attended the school there for 3 days before she was expelled after protests and threats against her life. Now, at one point, according to the history, a mob surrounded the building of Graves Hall in protest of her enrollment, and she spent half of her time at the university hiding in between classes. I just want y'all to think about this. She spent her time hiding in between classes because the hatred of a Black student at a white college was running that deep, folks. That was in 1956. Do you know the University of Alabama didn't enroll another Black person until 7 years later in 1963? And then in 1989, Lucy Foster returned to the university as a master's degree candidate in the College of Education, housed in Graves Hall. She graduated in 1992 and has since been recognized by an endowed scholarship, and she has a clock tower in her name. Okay, but now the school announced last week that they would rename Graves Hall to Lucy Foster while still keeping the name of Bibb Graves as part of the name. So it will be the Lucy Foster Graves Building. Graves Hall. Lucy Graves Hall. I want to bring in my culture crew. We got Lise Winnie, host of Millennial Anonymous podcast, and Iman Keith, who is an activist and an entrepreneur, to give their takes on this. Where do I start? Of course, Black folks are mad as hell about this whole situation. But I think that at least I'm trying to think of the word in terms of the level of ignorance and just, when somebody just don't get it, like that level is just so high in a situation like this. To rename a school You want to honor your black student, your first black student, but then you put her name next to a KKK member, and you thought that was going to be acceptable.
Yeah, it's Hellmanized. So it's like mayonnaise. It's very mayonnaise. I don't know why they would do something
Wait a minute,
like that.
hold on. You came up with a whole. Wait a minute, hold on.
I came up, yes.
Hold on. Yo.
It's very mayo.
I want to laugh because I just like, what the heck? It's Hellmanized.
It's Hellmanized, yes.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, so it's giving quite mayonnaise. It doesn't make any sense, but this is what we get. And I think that sometimes, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but that's what I do. I think that we focus way too much on symbolism, because basically even putting her name on the building is it's symbolism. Because at the end of the day, if the people who kept the Graves name knowing that he was a part of the KKK, I mean, but back then, what was the 20s and 30s, that was like, what, a prerequisite of the governorship in Alabama? Like, that was a part of the application to be a part of the KKK. So when you think about it, the people that want to keep the name on the building, even if you put her name there, they're still there. Her name is just on the building. So at the end of the day, it really didn't change the culture. It didn't change the system. It just changed the name to appease Black people. And I think that's where we get stuck.
And you know what? And that's part of my, and it's funny, Lisa, that you said it, because that's what was part of my rationale, even when, and we don't have to go too far into this, but it makes me think of when folks were talking about the Confederate statues, wanted to take down the Confederate statues because they were like, well, they were racist. Yeah, they were racist, but the truth of the matter is that really happened. Those type of people really existed. They existed then and they still exist now. So taking down a statue, we for example, in Baltimore, John Hopkins is a slave owner. I mean, you look at the history of Hopkins, he owns slave. Nobody's changing John Hopkins' name in Baltimore. I mean, that name is going to stay up there. So it's like this type of thing, like we want to erase history so bad, or we don't want to acknowledge history to the point it almost makes us look foolish, Iman, that I mean, you got a situation like this where you want to put the symbolism out there. You want to make it seem like, oh, we're making this type of progress. But then at the end of the day, you pull a move like this and it's like, what the point?
Yeah. I agree with Lisa on this one. It's just about symbolism. It's a pacifying effect that we keep getting. I believe Maya Angelou is going to be on the quarter or like the $20 bill or something like that. I may have misinformation, but it's just like, okay, this is going to help us feel better. Whitewashing history isn't going to change what actually happened. I have read that they are trying to change the McGraw-Hill textbooks in the South, specifically Texas, from saying that we were slaves, we were servants rather than slaves.
Servants or
Don't sugarcoat what actually happened. That's not how it went. Indentured servants had somewhere to live and stay, but we're gonna stay on topic. When it comes to the building being renamed, I would look at it from the opposite perspective. This could show some type of a triumphant, I guess, thing when it comes to African Americans, how resilient we are. We get put down so much. We are the most fighting type of people. We will keep going and keep going no matter what. So I would look at it from that perspective. It could be that it shows how no matter the circumstances nor the environment, because you wouldn't catch me at a university hiding in class. I'm scared of racism, but that was back then. It's a sign of triumph. She dealt with that, and for you to stay there for only 3 days, think about how severe that had to be for that experience. 3 days, and I'm already getting pushed out. She came back. Exactly. That's our resilience as African Americans. When I say we will dog fight and keep fighting, I would like for us to start winning more often. But
yes,
we fight, and I would look at it as a thing of a triumph. But it is a pacifying effect that I'm pretty tired of.
I'm personally, I can agree with you on a lot of things, Iman, but this resilient thing is getting to my skin. I'm tired of black folks being put into a space of, oh, we're strong and we're resilient, like we're some Tupperware or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? It feels like where our souls are being commodified in such a way where you know we have this expectation of being resilient, right? And it's almost takes away the fact of it takes away the humanity of us, right? Because it's like saying, oh, Black people can take anything. And that's well and good, and that's true.
That don't mean throw anything at us.
But that don't mean to throw our ass in the fire all the time. You know what I mean?
I got
you. And that's the part about it that in this article, you know, one of the students was making a point, like, we had fought for years to get this building renamed to honor this one woman, this Black woman, and that is still not enough. Like, she went through that experience back in 1956, came back to the university, still able to get through the trials of coming back to a racist institution, matriculated out of that university, and you're mean to tell me that she hasn't earned a space on her own for the building? I mean, even in its symbolism, but at the fact is, she still hasn't earned that space. And that's the part about this, for me at least, that we go through all of these changes, we meet the criteria that is placed before us by white people and the system and all of those things, but then at the end of the day, it's still not enough.
Agreed, but I think it's also monetary, because you have to realize that he probably gave money to that school, and that, unfortunately, money trumps common sense, money trumps doing the right thing, and they're looking at it from a monetary perspective. But I do agree with you that it is unfortunate, but this is the system, unfortunately, that we're in, especially with Black women. It's like you are not seen as competent until proven. You have to prove it, whereas everybody else walks in the room and they are assumed competent as soon as they walk in a room, especially if you're a white man. And unfortunately, we are in a place where that is not the case. And we're still seeing that no matter what she was able to accomplish and the things that she's gone through. So I hope that if this is what the students want, because I know it's symbolism, but if this makes them feel better about going to class every day and that it makes them just that much more proud, by all means, don't stop the process. And I hope the school listens to them and they do right by them.
And I hope so too. I think that the other part of that is there has to be a much greater conversation. Look, I get it. University of Alabama has probably been a bastion of educational achievement for white people in that area or in the surrounding area. I get that. But, you know, we always got to keep our foot on the gas, Iman. You know, you and I, and we've been in organizing spaces for years in the city. And if, for example, I'm always like reminded that we're the ones that's always fighting. Nobody else is fighting. We got to be the one to keep our foot on the gas, up the ass of somebody to give us something to make us to see our humanity. And it's I'm gonna be honest, it's tiring after a while. One of the big things that we didn't talk about in the first segment around healthcare and Black people is that a large part of our disparity, or a large part of the reason that we're not as healthy is because we take on the burden of racism. We take on the burden of white supremacy. We have become the recipients of the worst treatment, and that has essentially gotten into the DNA of who we are and who our children are, or who our children will become. We take on so much, and it's like, damn, like we can't even get a name.
There's no more room on the plate. There's no more room on the plate. There's no more room. Don't add any more trauma to what we've dealt with. And Farajii, I do agree with you. I think that a lot of us, even as Black people, forget what we are dealing with systemically. Poverty, the projects literally was a project to put the same group of people in the same area with the same income and see how they would thrive. And nothing has changed. We forget about the history of the things we've had to deal with as far as housing, redlining, even outside of just medical issues. It's an ongoing issue. It's a full plate, a heavy plate. It is a Thanksgiving plate with extra turkey and gravy. It's a lot to do, and I think that we sometimes forget that as well.
Absolutely. So when, I mean, you know, Lisa, I'm wondering, as we look at this situation down in Alabama, part of me is wondering, okay, are there other schools that are considering this, or what can we do to learn from a situation like this? Now, the University of Alabama hasn't said whether they're going to change their decision or not of just putting Lucy Foster's name and take down Bibb Graves' name. So that hasn't been announced yet. But I'm wondering for other schools or other institutions that are looking at this situation, what can be done or what can be gleaned from this situation?
I hope that other schools do take this in consideration, especially since it's, first of all, it's Black History Month. So the fact that we're even doing this during Black History Month it's laughable. But I hope that schools do, because we are seeing that African American women are among the highest people that are going to college. They're the most educated subset. So it would only make sense that you start to recognize and to do right by them if this is in fact what we want as Black women. If we want you to recognize our achievements and our accomplishments, I hope that other schools do. You get all these millions of dollars from these students attending these universities, and at the very minimum, all they're asking you is to change a name on the building. I hope that they can do that. But again, I want people to not get so focused and lost on just the names and the symbolism. I know I keep going back to this, but it seems like sometimes it gets stuck there, and then we don't really move past doing what we should and actually to move things forward and to make things easier for Black communities. And we just get the symbolism and then wonder why we come up empty-handed. So let's not get focused on it, but I hope that the schools and universities do make this a reality for the people that want it and the people that are mostly paying the tuitions these days. A lot of Black women are doing that, and we deserve a name on a building. That's at minimum, we got you driving around in Maseratis. Come on, give us a name on a building.
My thinking is, Iman, that if we can, if you want to keep up certain statues of individuals, that's fine. I think that we do need to put some names out there, because again, for me, it's like when we're looking at the next generation of Black pioneers, heroes and sheroes, when we're looking at those folks, when they're walking across buildings, I mean, for some people, at least, symbolism sparks the thought or gets them activated to see, you know what? Oh, wow, that's who is Lucy Foster, or who is this, or who is that? Symbolism has that power. I'm not totally against symbolism because I think it has its place, but I do agree with you on the fact that we can't just rest there. And I think that's the big part about this, Iman. Like, we're fighting for certain things to look a certain way on the outside, but then you still have to fight to change what's on the inside.
To change on the inside, though, Lise really did hit it on the head. It's a monetary thing. What comes with money comes the power to set the table and have the conversation, like I said prior. If we are able to get to the point of, our wealthy Blacks who have the money to put into these institutions or programs, whatever it may be, then we'll be able to make that change. Like she said, symbolism feels good. All right, but what else? What else can we get from it? Minimum, you give us the name of a building. Okay, what else can you do for us? Do you have scholarships for minorities? Do you have scholarships for, I don't know, a certain program for African Americans to excel? What else do you have for us?
Absolutely. And that's the big part of this. Like, here's what I would like to see. If you really, at least this is to your point of money, if the University of Alabama, the Black students of UA, have decided that this is unacceptable, then boycott and organize where you're not paying, either you're paying the tuition or the alumni, the Black alumni of UA jump on board and say, look, we're going to start putting some pressure on the administration to do something. We've seen this happening in Black colleges and white colleges and universities across the country. When Black folks said when we say enough is enough, we do have the power to change things, whether it's the culture, whether it's the system, whether it's any type of relationship that we have with any institution. We have the power to change things. We just don't know how to tap into that power. We think it's way before, so far off. Like, oh my gosh, no, we can't do that. We can't do this. We have the power. And once you say, I'm not spending no more money here, that building needs to say Lucy Foster. You need to take down Bibb Graves, or we're going to withhold, I don't know, $1 million.
Farajii, how many of us have that same spirit, though? I'll be the devil's advocate and say we have black people who are willing to fight, but it's not that many of us. Imagine it's about 1,000 or something going against 10,000. Who else is willing to risk? Because there could be backlash to boycotting or withdrawing from participation in the university. But on the reverse end, who's really going to risk it? Who's going to risk it? I would hope and wish that people gain that spirit to say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired. I'm stopping here. But they cannot do it alone. It definitely takes, at least now, takes more than just one person. It takes more than just going viral on social media. We need more people like that.
Right. Lisa, what's your take?
I agree. I think it does take more for things to really change. And she's right. If you're not willing to step up, and there's not a lot of people that are willing to step up, you're going to be standing out there all by yourself, or at least it may feel that way or seem that way. But I think people, when you look back at history, a lot of the people that started the civil rights movement, they were children, they were young. And so it's hard for us when we look back at that. But I think the difference is that we don't work together in a way where we're organizing, we're planning, we know exactly what it is that we want. And if we don't know what we want, you can't ask for what you want, what you don't know what it is that you need. So that's where we need to figure that part out. I think really being able to get together, because if people had more of a plan, I think that more people probably would get on board if they knew exactly where it was going and what it required.
I think that's an excellent point, Lisa. And I think that the point you just made about the fact that a lot of the ones that we celebrate during this time period of Black History Month, they were young people. I mean, you know, when we often tout Dr. King, we can certainly tout Rosa Parks and all that, but they were still pretty young. They weren't older people. These were young people. And I think that that's part of the direction that we need to go. And more importantly, the Black college student at that time during the civil rights period, during the Black Power period, the Black college student was the one that was on the front line. That Black college student was the one making the decisions and doing the strategies. The Black college students were the ones sitting at the counters. The Black college students were the ones who were walking along Selma. The Black college student, the young Black warriors of our people, they were the ones that put themselves out there. And they decided that, you know, enough is enough. And I think that's, you know, I often kind of reflect on it and say, you know, I wish we just had, some of us just had that same spirit. I mean, I know a lot of older people who lived during that time, but I think one of the greatest things that older people can do for us as young people is share the guidance, share the wisdom, share the knowledge, help us to understand the landscape that we want to get into, especially in this social justice age that we're in. We don't know the enemy of social justice like you do. We don't know the enemy of freedom, justice, and equality, the political enemies, the educational enemies like you do. Share that. And if you share that, if the next generation, if the older generation share that with the next generation, like the great Sankofa Bird, we will make a connection much deeper.
I think what changed about it now with living in our times now, we've become comfortable. Racism is more hidden now. Now that we're able to get jobs, we are, even though it may not always be equal pay, and that's still an issue, we're able to get on the bus, don't have to sit on the back. We're able to go get a car. We're able to get loans. I think because they have now opened up our ability to navigate within the system as far as with society, I think that's why a lot of us don't have that same spirit, because we're not literally being beaten. We're not watching public lynchings, because we're not watching books and eggs be thrown at that one Black student that's going to the school, because we're not seeing this anymore. I think because we're comfortable in where we're at, that spirit is hard to arise or bring out of people because we're comfortable.
Right. I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Iman. I would agree with you. Ladies, we got to take another pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears, talking about being uncomfortable. Let's talk about the fact that no-knock warrants, yes, that strategy, that tactic that police used in killing our dear sister, Breonna Taylor, is still being used by police departments across the country, even as a result of the great outrage around the tactic. Now we're going to talk about the latest situation with the death of Amir Locke, and most importantly, how no-knock warrants still are a part of the law enforcement policing strategy. So we'll have a conversation with Attorney Warren Brown to get some insight about that. So stay with us. We got a lot more coming at you in the next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the show here on the Culture on the Black Star Network. We just want to welcome you back because this show is all about making sure we have these important conversations about the culture that is dictating and determining how we engage, how we govern, how we police one another, how we educate with one another, how we do politics. So this show, this platform here on the Black Star Network is an opportunity for you to hear different insights. That's why we have our culture crew members like Lise Winnie and Iman Heath and many of us that you have seen over these past few days since we got the show started. So we hope that you continue to be supportive of the work that we're doing, but most importantly, understanding that this culture needs to be analyzed, that we do need to take time to pause and to reflect and to think through how we're doing things. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in a vicious cycle where there is no ending, no change in sight. And we need to change that immediately. That's the case. This is the same sentiment that we have with this latest case around Amir Locke, a 22-year-old who was killed in his apartment in Minneapolis while just sleeping there. And the police happened to get access to what they call a no-knock warrant, which is a warrant that allows them to move first and ask questions later. And as a part of that, as a result of that no-knock warrant situation, police killed Amir Locke while he was asleep. Now, this is not a new case, especially in Minneapolis, where we also saw this situation with Breonna Taylor, where she was killed as a result of a no-knock warrant that was done, that police had on Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend. And it became a national conversation about the use of this policing tactic. However, even though police departments have vowed to, and especially in Minneapolis, have said, look, we will not use this tactic anymore, guess what just happened? The tactic was used again. Here to give us some insight about this no-knock warrant and if we will ever see an end to this type of policing is Attorney Warren Brown from Baltimore. Attorney Brown, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the conversation today. Attorney Brown, are you on mute? Okay, there you go. Hold on. We still got you. Let me check on it. Let's make sure Attorney Brown is good.
How about now?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, brother. All right, Attorney Brown, let's talk, Mr. Brown, about this situation. I mean, what we saw with the Amir Locke, and then now we're still having these conversations about no-knock warrants even after the killing of Breonna Taylor. Why are we still in this place, Mr. Brown?
Well, because the courts have allowed the police to use this tool when it comes to search and seizure. The way it operates is that they've got to go to a judge to get permission to enter into someone's home unless there are exigent circumstances. And in some instances, they ask that they be allowed not to announce their presence, but just to go in, and i.e. the no-knock. There are a couple conditions that have to be met before a judge is legally supposed to authorize no-knock. One is that there's some reasonable suspicion that there's going to be a destruction of evidence, or that to go in after announcing themselves that it might put the officers in danger. And then also that, another possibility is that it might lead to the potential escape of someone that they're looking for inside of whatever residence or that they're entering into.
Mr. Brown,
No, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask though. I mean, it's crazy that this is the same jurisdiction that said that they've moved on, that they've improved their policing strategies as a result of the killing of Breonna Taylor, and then just a little bit over a year or so, or a short period later, we're seeing this tactic still in force. And I'm wondering, it seems like it was just a bunch of BS, a good good sounding words, a good rhetoric to appease the protests that have been happening around the country around police brutality, and we're back at this again.
Right, and that's because, in part, the argument of the police is, policy aside, when we go in, we ought to have the advantage. If in the absence of that advantage, our well-being is going to be jeopardized. The problem with the no-knock is what you see, that innocent people oftentimes are victimized and killed. In Maryland, for example, the thought was, well, if we're going to allow no-knock, it's got to be between like 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. The argument being that during that period of time, people are probably going to be up and not be startled to the point of responding in the fashion that most people would respond if they heard the door being kicked in.
Wait a minute, hold on, Mr. Brown. Hold on, wait a minute. I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm laughing at how dumb that sounds, that you try to put hours on when you bust inside somebody's house.
Well, again, the argument being that that's the time when people are more likely to be up and not, not startled to the extent that they would be after hours. For example, when you're asleep and the door is kicked in. I mean, you're not stopping look for why this is happening. You're going to respond in a fashion that might lead to your death or injury or the officer's death or injury. So the thinking is, let them do it during the day when people are up. And of course, they'll be still startled, but less so. They'll be more prepared to adequately deal with the circumstances than if they are, awakened, as a result of someone kicking in their door. But in any case, it poses a danger for everybody, for the people that are there, and quite frankly, for the officers, because you come barging in a lot of people's doors, kicking their door in, they're going to open fire. They'll figure it out later on, but they're not going to sit there and just be victimized because they don't know who it is coming through the door.
Mr. Brown, how do you make sure, or you try to minimize the risk of police who we know have bust down the doors of places and they found it was the wrong address, the wrong person? You know what I mean? They have, oh, this person moved from here. How do you minimize that risk?
Well, yeah, the intelligence, surveillance, something beyond, this is the last known address, and that was registered a year ago, something beyond that. I mean, there should be, some investigation before you barge into people's homes, although it happens all the time. It really happens. It's interesting, when Kurt Smoke was the mayor, one of his friends in his neighborhood was the victim of such a no-knock, and it was meant for someone else, and there was a big brouhaha. A couple of officers, as a matter of fact, paid the price for that. But that was high profile. That person had connections. But it is it's a problem, but it's usually based in part on just a rush to judgment, a lack of a thorough investigation, and just the desire to kick in some doors, man. I mean, you have that at times. You got some real cowboys out there who get a thrill out of it.
And Mr. Brown, that's part of the other concern that I have, that, when you think about police officers, you think about your officers that's walking the beat, talking to community, that type of thing. But then when you think about police officers as such as SWAT, you're thinking about Hollywood's version of SWAT, somebody taking the big, long, the steel pipe, busting down doors, shootouts and all of that. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way that certain things can be done, certain objectives can be met without that level of violence.
Yeah, well, it probably is and can be. And listen, one of the issues, one of the things that allow a police officer to successfully get a no-knock is to say to the judge, if we knock and announce, that's going to give them time to destroy, the evidence. Now, it just depends on, I think, what the evidence is. If we're talking about this ubiquitous CDS that they might flush down the toilet, it's right, really, I mean, who cares, right? There's going to be some remnants of it. If you've had enough to go to a judge and get a warrant to go into the house, especially a no-knock warrant, I mean, you've got some evidence, to build a case. So is it really worth risking anybody's life to kick in a door and in part based on your assertion to the judge in an effort to obtain a warrant, no-knock warrant, that, hey, they might destroy some drugs? I mean, really? I mean, that who cares, quite frankly? I mean, it's not right. It's not worth risking anyone's life over that. And then of course, the background of the individual, is it that there's a warrant for failing to appear in court, or or theft of computers? I mean, it just depends. Now, if they're gun running, you argue that, listen, we think there might be guns in there, then it's a real public safety issue. It's a risk to the officers, and they have a right to be protected. It's a risk to the officers. Then you're talking about something. But a lot of these no-knock are for, things that really don't impact significantly on the community in terms of the levels of violence. It's, oftentimes it's drugs, and, there's always going to be that. And it's not worth kicking in somebody's door and risking someone being seriously injured or killed because
Right.
you want to catch them before they flush the drugs.
Before we bring it back our culture crew in, Mr. Brown, I wanted to get your take in terms of on the legal side, the work that you're doing as an attorney. Is there any momentum? Is there any push to try to really ban this in jurisdictions? Are you finding that there are some jurisdictions that are further along with getting certain tactics like this banned versus others? Is that the case that you're seeing across the country?
Yeah, you're seeing that in some regards, especially on the federal level. They pretty much have done away with that with not all of their police forces. They have a ton of different police, DEA, FBI, and that type of thing. And then in many jurisdictions, they're taking a second look at it. But I mean, listen, the alternative, the customary knock and announce has different variations from, boom, 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 police to police. They didn't answer.
Right.
Let's go.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. Some years back when Pat Jessamine was, I wish I could remember the guy's name. Pat Jessamine was prosecutor. It was up near Chinquapin High School. Chinquapin Middle School. They said they knocked. But only thing my client, he was in the basement, heard was a front door being kicked in, and he grabbed his gun, ran upstairs, and turned the corner and started shooting and hit 4 officers. And originally they charged him, of course, with attempted murder and all that. Then when it came out that the officers did not knock and announce when they were required to, they just kicked in the door. The charges were completely dismissed against this guy. And I told him, I said, man, you're the only person I know in America that shot 4 police officers and didn't go to prison and lived to tell
didn't go to prison.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
it is. I want to bring back and I mean, what else can you do? You have to.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm not.
Right.
Let's bring back our culture crew members, Lise Winnie, who is the host of Millennial Anonymous podcast, and Iman Heath, activist and entrepreneur. Iman, what's your question for Mr. Warren Brown, Attorney Brown? You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being here. So my question is, do you think by increasing the time period for surveillance to receive a warrant, do you think increasing that time period will make a difference? Or even after a warrant being granted, do you think increasing surveillance even after that will help?
The time period of increasing the warrant will make a difference. We're going to check back in with Iman to make sure her technicals. But does that, and I think that's a great question, Mr. Brown, like when we're talking about the time period of the warrant and everything.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, some careful scrutiny, investigation that will allow everybody to be, safer than they ordinarily would be if it's just run to the commissioner or the magistrate or the judge and get the warrant and then just go kick somebody's door in. Some surveillance, some efforts to lure people out. Something beyond just this John Wayne, RoboCop kind of kicking the door mentality.
Right.
But, let's use our brain. Let's connive a little bit and see if we can't get in or get them out, or at least put ourselves in a position where we're comfortable that it is not as dangerous as it would be if we hadn't exercised some of those, those efforts.
Absolutely. Lise, what's your question for Attorney Brown?
So I believe they said that some of the details around the officers who were able to get the warrant are sealed. Is there a particular reason why they would have that information be sealed, and why, or would we find out how they got the no-knock warrant?
Yeah, and oftentimes warrants are sealed because it's a part of an investigation. And so if that affidavit is available to whoever is arrested, it may also detail information that was given to the judge. The judge read the affidavit and says, okay, I'm gonna give you this no-knock warrant, and it may compromise investigations that are ongoing. That's generally why the affidavits are sealed, not so much the warrant, but the affidavit that the judge used to determine, okay, I'm going to let you all go into this place for one, and I'm gonna let you go in without knocking and announcing. Now in Maryland, for example, you got 30 days, and then that affidavit has to be revealed unless the government goes back before the judge and says, listen, we're still involved in this investigation, and to release this affidavit is going to compromise our investigation. So it's generally meant for that purpose, to protect the investigation that's ongoing.
And Mr. Brown, when we talk about, in the particular case of Amir Locke having a gun, like the justification was the fact that he owned a gun, or he had a gun in pretty much in this area, but he was a legal owner.
Right. Yeah, it's a sad situation,
and so,
because I mean, it's a sad situation. I mean, he was legitimate in his every action. You know, he had a gun. It was not on the street, so he didn't have to have a carry permit. And in many states, it doesn't even have to be licensed to you. It's just so if you meet otherwise eligibility requirements, you can have a gun in your house or your business, and you don't have to have a license to carry it. So he was justified in what he was doing in his situation. When the cops come in, I don't know. I haven't seen it, frame by frame. They do see a gun. They see a gun, they're going to react, they're going to shoot. That's the bottom line. They're going to shoot. And there are those who argue that, that's a legitimate exercise of police powers, because you don't know whether that gun's getting ready to be turned on you. Now, I think they're trying to argue that one of the officers was in, jeopardy of potentially being shot. And then the others are saying, no, that gun was pointed down to the floor. But just pulling that gun. I mean, listen, he could have pulled his phone from out of from under that blanket and he was shot.
My God! Right.
So there's no question about that. So
and I think that's the big part about this whole thing, is that regardless of what the scenario is, and it's so unfortunate. He was 22 years old, but it's unfortunate just because they came into his house and he had no options. He was going to suffer by one of their bullets regardless.
Yeah.
They came into his home.
I haven't read up on it much. I don't know what they were looking for, who they were looking for, whether it was, a drug dealer, or whether it was somebody had a murder warrant out on them, whether it was somebody that was easily classified as being dangerous, whether it was somebody that was not so dangerous. It's just that there was a warrant out on them for, larceny or theft or whatever it might have been. But in any case, I just think that, is it really all that important? And, could they have accomplished their intended goal without going through exercising these efforts that they did? Was there opportunity for these people to get out of there? If not, then we know they got to come out the front door. All right. So we don't have to worry about them escaping. Possibly before going in, turn the water off so they can't flush anything out. And if there are windows, you have other officers outside so that, whatever's thrown out, they can retrieve it. And then, so you're not worried about destruction of evidence. You're not worried about escape. And so really just comes down to our safety. But, again, if there's no exit, they got to come through the front. Then I think it's reasonable to say, listen, if we knock and announce and let them know we're here and see how they want to carry it, then that's probably the more prudent path to take, as opposed to just kicking in the door. And but some of them live for that, man. I mean, that's what really gets that adrenaline rush for them. Some of them live. For that, just kicking in the door. Yeah, absolutely. And it usually, and Mr. Brown, usually it's in minority communities poor minorities communities that this happens. They're not going to go up in the upper middle class and with a warrant. They're not even going to seek a knock, no knock warrant. And but that's where it happens, because they just see us as being a threat, period. And so when it comes to, a search warrant on our premises, it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to initially seek a no-knock.
And Mr. Brown, my final question to you is, now that we're at this place, what legal course can the family of Amir Locke or anyone that's been victimized in this situation, in a situation like this? We saw with Breonna Taylor, it took a long time to get to that verdict, but what legal recourse does the family have? Does victims have in this?
Well, if I'm correct, I think the Attorney General out there is a brother who was once in Congress. So I think, the Attorney General's office is going to take a close look at this. Now, from a civil point of view, I think it's really going to probably center around the training of these people. Not so much, a malicious intent on the part of this officer to just kill somebody, because again, the gun is displayed. It's reasonable for anybody who is on the other end of that to feel some apprehension. Like I said, if it had been a phone, then they might have more difficulties, but they still would have shot him. But they may have more difficulties in a civil matter. Criminally, from a point of view of suing, I think it's going to really come down to a matter of training and making sure they cross their T's and dot their I's. We don't know what was in that affidavit. We don't know if the judge, was given correct information, and if it was incorrect, whether it was intentionally incorrect. And so some of those are things that they will, take a deep dive and try to develop answers for too.
Absolutely. Attorney Warren Brown, Mr. Brown, thank you so much, sir, for being a part of the conversation today.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Absolutely. I want to go back to my culture crew, Iman and Lynn and Lise, when we talk about this whole scenario, and I want to just share with folks some of the comments that are posted on our YouTube page as folks are watching right now. For example, it looks like Susu says, please, people, we are living back in slavery. We are just not running anymore. They are just killing people. Speaking of the police. And then Stephanie Travis says, 6 months, it's just so many people that have guns. Why they have to have a problem with us blacks folks having one? And then I saw another comment from Yaldo the Fool, and Yaldo said, they want to feel powerful. It is not needed for real. It's Lucifer inside them, I swear. They are when he says this, they are power junkies like a heroin addict needing a fix.
Like Mr. Brown said, a lot of those officers, it really gets them going when they get to knock down the door. I think of the kid that was bullied in high school. That's what it sounds like. You finally have your police power. You finally have the law. So now you're going to take it to the extreme as much as possible. And another thing I thought of, as far as with Breonna Taylor situation 2 years ago in March, literally almost exactly 2 years later, with the no-knock warrant, Kenneth Walker said that the police didn't announce themselves, but detectives said that they did. He say, she say, now they go back and forth. In this same situation, officers are saying that one officer was almost shot, when other officers say, no, the gun's put at the floor. So where are the body cameras? Like, do officers who perform search warrants, do they not have to have a body camera? Like, where's some type of footage or evidence showing to prove either point of view? Because again, they had the same issue 2 years ago with Breonna Taylor situation, where officers would say one thing, but of course victims say something else. So where's the evidence? Where's the proof to at least show that, okay, you say that you made an announcement, but if you have a no-knock warrant and you don't want to announce yourself, why would you announce yourself? Like, it's that doesn't make sense on the part of officers.
But see, Iman, I want to even go back to the part about what Mr. Brown said, when you have police who do boom, 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 police versus, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, if you know you about to do something real shady, if you're trying to come up in a situation looking real, just being real suspicious, right? You're going to quote unquote do that little knock and say, no, we announce ourselves, police.
Yeah.
But you know it deep down in your heart, you just doing that just for the sake of, if somebody were to question you. Versus,
I said it.
That's what, basically abiding by the law. You're not doing it because of the law. You're doing it just because you don't want to get in trouble, because you know what you're about to do is some demonic stuff. And I think we need to put it in the context like this. I know many of our watchers on our YouTube page is saying, like, this is demons and this is, like I said, Lucifer. I mean, when you think about how people take power and abuse it to the point where people lose their lives. abuse it to the point where you are a force of just not, you use your power to destroy people's homes, destroy lives, take lives. I mean, and you get something from that. You kind of like, yeah, look what we did today. I mean, that is a very, very serious problem. And if we have officers in police departments across this country that are thinking like that, I mean, that's just savagery.
And I even think of the question when you ask that, my question is, what is the value of a life, and whose life do we value? Because as we can see, statistically showing over the years, it's African Americans and minorities who are these victims when it comes to these police shootings. So what is the value of our life when you were to ask them, what is the value of our life? Why don't you go to those suburban areas if there's a warrant? Why don't you carry on that way there? But here in more urban areas, where there are more of us as far as warrants, maybe crime is higher. Why do you feel the need to, like Mr. Brown said, go in like a cowboy? Why do you feel the need to do that? But the value of the life.
Go ahead, Lise.
But I also think that if we want to get stuff done, you also have to make people see what's in it for me. And just like he said, it's not even just you're putting Black people's lives in danger. You're putting the officer's life in danger because you're putting them in a situation that could easily go sideways. And it doesn't make any sense to even approach it in that manner. Like he said, how much evidence are you going to destroy in that short period of time? Can it happen? Yes, but there's probably going to be some remnants left over from that being the case. So I think that we do need to look at it from both sides of that spectrum. Like, it doesn't have, how much benefit does it have of having a no-knock warrant? And unfortunately, in these situations, it seems like we keep hearing the same excuse time and time again. And I'm like, how many times do you need to have this happen before you start to change the policy? Because at this point, it doesn't seem like it is. Like, they'll say that we're going to get rid of it, but then we still have the technicality of somehow you still have a no-knock warrant on the books. We even seen where when they serve warrants, they can still go, even not even a no-knock, they can go awry. So you would think that they would try to put things in place to not only protect its citizens, but also to protect the officers that are going to these houses as well. So this is not beneficial to either side. So I don't understand why we even still are trying to make this is something that they use so readily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, Iman, Lise, I want to continue to share what our watchers are saying about this conversation, because so many people are just livid that we're still in this place, even after a couple of years of protests, even after we've all declared Black Lives Matter, even after there has been great talks about police reform. One of our watchers says that, as much as we cry, and this is from Janae, as much as we cry out police reform, the problem is the officers don't want to reform, and that is the problem. So they keep doing it. F immunity. We're going to talk about that because we often put it on the system. We heard Mr. Brown say that a lot of these prosecutors or the folks that are in these police officials are saying, hey, we're going to improve our training. But then at the end of the day, you could train anybody to do some great things. But if a joker wants to think outside of their training, if they're going to do what they want to do, then guess what? We still have a problem. So we'll continue to have the conversation. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot coming at you for the final 30 of the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Don't go anywhere.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, we have been having a very robust conversation about a major policing tactic that has garnered the attention of the whole country, the no-knock warrant. In our previous segment, we had talked to attorney Warren Brown about this situation as it relates to the killing of 22-year-old Amir Locke, who was shot and killed while laying on the couch, and due to the no-knock warrant, as police barged into his place and shot him dead. Now the conversation goes back to that place that we never thought it would go to, which is the efficacy, the value of having such a tactic, even though this situation with Amir Locke that took place in Minneapolis is once again back at the forefront because of the killing of Breonna Taylor just a couple of years ago. And now police forces and the constituency and local leaders are trying to figure out what can be done to address this issue. We've been having a great conversation with Culture Crew members Lise Winnie and Iman Heath. Lise Winnie serves as the host of Millennial Anonymous podcast, and Iman Heath is an activist and entrepreneur. I want to go back to just some of the points that our watchers have been saying in regards to this situation about the no-knock warrant. A number of comments are coming in, and folks, keep posting your comments on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page, and we'll make sure we try to get to them as many as we can because we want to keep you engaged in this conversation. Wayne Bradley says, why is the plain law of the Constitution not followed? What does the Constitution say about search and seizure? Lawrence Taylor checked in and said, I don't understand the judges should be prevented by the community to sign no-knock warrants. This should not be authorized. Lawrence also said, I don't understand he said, right, the judge should be prevented. And the question about that came up from Janae, which I think is something that we should talk about, as much as we cry out police reform, the problem is the officers don't want to reform, and that is the problem. So they keep doing it. F immunity. And I'm going to always state this, Iman and Lise. I want to go back to that point that was made with the George Floyd Policing Act, the one piece of legislation that could have turned the tide on how police do their job, especially within the Black and brown and marginalized communities. But as a part of that piece of legislation, they had a portion of that called qualified immunity, where the police would be held, an officer would be held personally responsible if they find that that officer had shot and killed someone unjustly. And one of the big things about this qualified immunity is that it protects police officers from being held liable. So now we're looking at a situation where if you have officers who can be taught and trained how to reform, who can be taught and trained how to deal with a certain situation, but yet they're still choosing to go through the old cowboy style way of policing, then it may not matter. And so I'm wondering, Iman, when we talk about police reform, it really comes down to the officers. And now we have to take a chance of whether the officer that you might be interacting with on your next stop or in any setting may or may not be the officer who adheres to that new training.
When you say that, what I hear screaming in my head is their discretion. You have no idea which officer you're going to get in any given situation, and especially with their discretion on their history, what they have may experience. Tyneese Johnson commented, these police forces are overrun with racist / supremacists. I want to say, even from the foundation of how policing started back in slavery, the Roundup group. Even if you look on Google, simply Google a police badge, the original police badge, it's like a star that is still on police badges we have now. But just where policing even started, it was to round up runaway slaves. It was to make sure those who were helping slaves escape to the north, had slaves hiding in their home, they would do the same cowboy-like act, bust in the door. And I'm not gonna say I'm sure. I want to say I lean more toward there weren't warrants needed back in those times for those type of acts. So it's still, the foundation needs to be dismantled, which goes into reform. But even as individuals, you have to think about or consider the police officers' discernment. I'm sorry, not discernment, discretion. Discretion is the biggest issue. We're all different people. We all have different personalities. We all have different perspectives on what I think a good knock to announce I'm coming versus what do you think a good knock is when you're coming to somebody's house. No matter if it's 7 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's still your discretion or your experience is what matters.
Absolutely. Lise, what's your take on this in terms of, I mean, you have officers who may be trained, officers who know or who are encouraged to use their best judgment, their best of intelligence, but still decide, well, you know, I mean, that's all well and good, but if you really want to get at these people, this is how you need to handle them. How do we stop that? Where's the reform in that?
I think that's a great question. And that's the part of where do we really get things changed? Because at this point, you're changing somebody's mindset. If it is someone that is on the force and they absolutely do not like Black people and they have that mentality set that all Black people are criminals no matter what, there's not a whole lot of training that is going to change that. I think at the end of the day, you can do all of the sensitivity training, you can do cultural diversity training, but that's their mindset. Maybe the change needs to start in the hiring process instead of really focusing more so. I mean, of course, you need to focus on the articulation of it, but maybe there should be more focused on personality and traits and likelihood and those types of things before they actually hire. I think it starts at the hiring process because once the person is already in the job, it's not a whole lot you can do about that. And you can't make somebody change their mindset. The only other thing you could do is add in more consequences for them if you see something, or incentivize the other officers to tell if they see that somebody has a constant pattern. Maybe there should be some monetary incentives for those good quote unquote officers to tell on the bad ones.
Now those incentives. Go ahead, Farajii.
Lise, I don't like. I mean, these are grown ass people. You know what I'm saying? Like
to do this job.
These are grown people. These are grown ass men and women, right? Like I hear what you're saying, but these are grown ass men and women. We're talking about treating people humanely. We're just simply talking about doing the right thing.
Right. But
that's
then
all we're talking about, right? Like if you got to incentivize somebody wait a minute, look, let's keep it real. Being a police officer, being a civil servant, but especially being a police officer, that is not just a profession, that's a moral calling, because you literally have the power to grant life or cause death. Literally. Like right there, you are judge, jury, prosecutor, defense attorney, all in one, like when you're on the street. So when somebody is pleading their case to a police officer, it's like you don't know whether you're about to get the prosecutor or if you're going to get, the defense attorney. And it's like at the end of the day, the person has to have the right mind, just like a judge in a courtroom, but the courtroom, it's the street for these officers. And they make a decision about whether you live today and go on to see another day or you die tonight.
Yeah, don't let it be a domestic issue and he's got an issue with his wife at home.
And I'm saying exactly, and I'm just saying, like, if you got to incentivize people to not want to bust people in the head, that's a sad state of affairs.
I said incentivize people to tap, because at the end of the day, let's just be real. People are people, and you cannot change people or stop people from taking jobs. We know everybody done been in a place like, why did you get this job? Like, we've all been there, but unfortunately, this is a higher stakes job. Same thing when you go back to the medical field. We didn't tell those people to get into the medical field. They decided to go into the medical field. So once you have them in the medical field, you have to have when you have that much power, you have to have safety rails in place. If you can't change somebody's mindset, you have no idea what that person's going to be once they get in that job. That's why you need to change the hiring process and make those things more based on personality and likelihood of what they're going to do. And do they have those biases, and how do you overcome them? But once they're in place, that's why I'm saying, like, have something there that, unfortunately, no, we shouldn't have to do that. But this is life. This is life. This is where we're at.
Right.
You have to have something to be able to get those people to do the right thing. And unfortunately, one of the only things that people are motivated by is money. So trying to find a way to make that possible, because otherwise, what is the other alternative?
Right.
The other alternative, get your ass off the force.
But at least with what she was saying as far as the incentives when it comes to telling, I think the biggest issue is, and I've been on ride-alongs before. I went to the University of Baltimore, studying criminal justice, had to go on a few ride-alongs. And what I have learned from just being a part of that or in it is that if I do something wrong and you tell on me, but then when you need backup, you might think, oh, are they going to come? Because I did the right thing or told the right thing. Are they going to support me now? I've come across a few officers who say, some decide not, it usually isn't, those great circumstances where life or death is in their hands, but they won't say or mention what went left or what the officer did wrong in fear of retaliation by other officers. If I call Mayday, need backup, code 10, are they going to come? Are they going to lag when they come? In Baltimore City, lights and sirens are only for homicides, I believe, and another criteria of high risk situations. But it's the retaliation that they're scared of as well. Incentives would be nice, but it's also, you got to see if your boy's still going to back you up when you got a thief running on loose that's armed. That's another issue we got to look at on the police officer side as well.
And look, Tynese brought this point up, which I think Tynese is a longtime watcher of Black Star, and I think she brings up an excellent point. Says, here's the thing: do they really think they are doing wrong, though? Look at all the people that defend them after they kill someone like they did nothing wrong. And there is, and Tynese, I think that's a valuable question, because I feel like there needs to be essentially, it's like a moral compass. If like a person has a moral meter, the difference between, we're grown up, again, I'm going back, we're grown ass adults, right? You know the difference between right and wrong, good and evil. So if you don't know that busting in somebody's house in the middle of the night while they are asleep is going to be a traumatic, wrong experience that is going to create a result where they normally probably wouldn't respond any other way. But in this moment, they're going to respond either shooting, they're going to respond by running, they're going to respond by screaming. If you don't already know that in your head, then something is seriously wrong. As a police officer, you should not be on the police force if you don't think that's going to scare the hell out of somebody or that's going to cause somebody to start shooting back at you. You should already have these things in your head.
If you do your due diligence as far as surveillance, if you know that the home you're going into, they have armed people in there, how about instead of wanting to be a secret, announce yourself. That would be, but properly announce yourself. Bang on the door. Hey, this is such and such. We're coming in. If you know they're armed, at least to help protect yourself, so they won't think, okay, let me shoot first. Now, I'm not saying no one will shoot back, but at least give yourself the chance to at least alleviate the situation before you even get into it. Hey, it's the police. Because if you come busting in my house 3 o'clock in the morning, the first thing I'm gonna think, I'm gonna shoot you. But then how am I wrong because you were an officer? How would I know that on the opposite side of the door? Or if it's pitch black, how would I know?
You don't. And I think that's the thing, Lise, that at the end of the day, we're left in the dark about the situation. We have to, just as much as the police have more control over busting into your house in the middle of the night than you do by responding to them busting in your house in the middle of the night. At that moment, you lost all sense of control. You lost all sense of security, because most of the time, most of us are taught that once someone gets into your home, then you have every right to protect yourself and your home, right? But when it comes to the police, that doesn't apply. That once the police enter your home, you have to oblige and adhere to whatever they say to tell you to do. They're not thinking about your personal rights.
Yeah, it's
and I think that's the scary part about these moments and these situations.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, of course, you want to be able to protect yourself, and we have the right to be able to protect yourself if someone comes into your home. And that's why it doesn't make sense to me of why they have no knock warrants at all, because it's not safe for anyone. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I would like to see this. I don't know the stats, so I would love to see the statistics on it to see if they're able to catch more people with them than without, because I would kind of say that it's probably not if you actually took the data side by side. And so I think them doing more of the intelligence side, like when he was on, the Attorney Brown was on, I think that doing more of the intelligence, doing more research on the front end, because you have to be able to protect your citizens, and your citizens have every right. If you are a legal gun owner and somebody comes in your home, yes, you have the right to protect your home. So I agree with you there. I agree with you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Gabe checked in on our pages and said, yeah, change the police policy and not change the glorification of crime by the Black community. You want change. Both parties should act, not just one. So I hear you, Gabe, and I feel like, again, that's an uphill battle because America loves violence. You know, they say that violence is just as American as apple pie. We love guns and guns blazing. We love violence, right? We love it. We love it. Actually, there was a recent study report that came out that pretty much that, you know, there are a little bit over 320 million people in this country, but there are more people own 1 to 2 guns than there are people in this country. So, you know, you have all of these guns, all of these owners. I mean, the fact is we are a violent country. We have a violent culture. We love violence.
Yes, we got it.
And check this out. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it home where you know what I'm saying. Let's put it where the ghost can get it. The Black community, we love violence, man. We love talking about shooting and killing another. And you know what I'm saying. I'm a smack a mother, and I can't wait till that dude comes through. And I'm gonna do all. We love that. We love that. Now, does that mean that we should be justified that Black people should lose their lives at those who say that they're supposed to serve and protect us? Absolutely not. But it does put the onus back on us in terms of this glorification. If the police came up into a neighborhood, whether it's a white neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood, if they came up into a neighborhood where those residents of that neighborhood aren't accustomed to violence or don't glorify violence, they're going to handle situations much differently. When we see them, Mr. Brown said, when you go into affluent neighborhoods, white neighborhoods, Jewish neighborhoods, when you go in a certain black neighborhood, like if the culture of that neighborhood is not one based upon violence, the police are going to think twice about being violent. But if the culture of the neighborhood is rooted in violence, then guess what? The police not going to have any thoughts about coming in violently. Iman.
Right. They won't think twice about it. And another thing, as far as our culture, as you said, is celebrated as far as violence. It creates fear for them. That heightens their fear. Will I be shot? Will they think twice to shoot me? Will they care to not shoot me? Wait, I gotta shoot first. And with that adrenaline running and with your nerve running like that, it can cause a lot of chaos. And as you were saying, no matter what neighborhood you go to, depending on those people, how they maneuver is how they're going to handle the situation. I agree with the comment that, on our end, we have to negate and change how we approach violence as well. Social media plays a part. Our music plays a part. They're now glorifying what we listen to now. I forget the new artist's name. I don't really listen, but shooting and killing and not smoking. What they do? Drinking, lean, and all this extra stuff that we do now. Why would you want to glorify that? And it's only getting worse. Used to make music about selling drugs. Now they're making music about using drugs or I sold this and did that. Now it's I'm telling you this would happen. It's getting worse.
It's getting worse. Getting worse. At least when we think about, what's the next steps from this dynamic that we're in. I mean, we're in this culture. We know the police are going to respond the way they're going to respond from the community side, from a mother side, from a resident side, a constituent side. What would you recommend as being the next step?
I would hope that after seeing what has happened and it continues to happen, that we take a more proactive approach to preventing these things from happening. I don't want to see us where we wait and we are very reactive. It seems like that's what happens in most cities, counties, states, that they wait until something happens and then we act. We need to be working on these things constantly. We need to be starting and preparing if we notice that this is becoming a trend where no-knock warrants lead to death. I think it's like 94 people have been killed with no-knock warrants. That's something that shouldn't be happening. If it's outweighing what we need it to do, maybe we should start to work on changing those laws. And going back to what Iman said, I think that the value, unfortunately, to anyone, Black people, police officers, is that Black lives do not carry as much value. And it's unfortunate. And I think that's also where it needs to change. And it shouldn't be that we're talking about it and it gets on the news because it was a police officer involved. This is something that we should be working on just in general, that we need to get the deaths down of Black bodies. We have now made that a thing where we are so desensitized by Black bodies, we do not even flinch or blink an eye when someone is murdered. And that is unfortunate and it shouldn't happen. And I think that that's where it should start. We have to start valuing Black people.
No, I agree with you. And I think that right there, at least, is the least that we can do when we at least, not trying to make the murder of one of our own, a community member, just fodder for us to, this the subject of a chit chat. Like, oh, did you see this one today? The fact is, if we value ourselves, it's going to garner the respect of other people to value us. And that's just what it comes down to. That's what it comes down. Even if it's whether it's us as community members or the police, we do have to start valuing ourselves. And I truly believe if we make that different cultural shift, I never forget, I went to a school very quickly. I went into a school in Baltimore County, and I had a chance to talk to about 100 Black men, young boys. These were high school students. And one of the things that, I had my talk, and then I said, brothers, this is what we're going to do today. I said, before you leave out, I want you to make a decision to yourself that instead of calling each other the N-word, that for the rest of the day, you call each other brother. Just something very simple. I said, don't do anything. Just call each other brother. And so all of the young brothers, they got together. They were like, all right, brother Farajii, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So they started doing it. I got the report back that at first, you know, a couple of them was like, hey, walking through the hallways like, brother so-and-so, brother so-and-so. But then after a while, it created, the staff member said, brother Farajii, it changed the dynamic of how these young boys interacted with one another.
Changed the
like
culture.
They literally felt a little bit more ease. You saw them smiling more. Like, what's up, brother? How you feeling, brother? I mean, just something as simple as acknowledging that the man or the woman next to you is a part of your family, your extended family, can change the dynamics of the culture of death and violence. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. Small cultural changes can lead to large society changes, small culture changes. You don't have to call yourself the N-word. You call yourself the brother, and next thing you know, things start to change. I want to thank Iman Heath, who is an activist and entrepreneur, Lise Winnie, host of a Millennials Anonymous podcast. Thank you so much, sisters. I look forward to chatting with y'all again next week on Here on the Culture.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank all of y'all for being a part of the conversation. I love engaging with each one of you. I love the fact that you posted so many great comments and helped us to have this conversation. And look, as we move forward, that's exactly what we're going to ask you to do. Post your comments, share your thoughts, because I want to know what you want, what you know, and I certainly want you to be a part of this conversation. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, we need your financial support. Make sure you support Black Star Network. Tell your friends and family about it. And of course, stay tuned, because at the 6 o'clock hour, we got my big brother, Roland Martin, with Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.